March 1918. A woman stands in the Place de la République in Paris, 120 kilometers from the nearest German position. The morning is clear. No aircraft are visible overhead. No air raid sirens have sounded. An explosion tears through the street 3 blocks away, collapsing a building facade and killing 4 people. 15 minutes later, another explosion, this time near the Gare de l'Est. Then another. Then another. Throughout the day, shells fall randomly across the city at intervals of approximately 20 minutes. Each detonation produces destruction and casualties, but no one can identify the source. French military intelligence initially suspects high-altitude bombers operating above visual range. Observers scan the sky and see nothing. Air patrols find no enemy aircraft. The shells continue falling. By evening, 18 explosions have occurred. 80 people are dead. The French government has no explanation. The shells are arriving from a weapon 120 kilometers away, firing at an elevation angle so extreme that projectiles reach altitudes of 40 kilometers before descending onto Paris. The Germans called it the Kaiser Wilhelm Geschütz. Paris called it nothing because Paris did not know what it was. The terror was the point. The German military entered 1918 with an artillery problem that was strategic and psychological. The Western Front had stabilized into trench warfare, where conventional artillery, regardless of caliber, could not reach beyond approximately 35 kilometers. Paris lay well beyond this range from German-held territory. Long-range bombardment of enemy capitals had propaganda value and potential psychological impact that could undermine civilian morale and force reallocation of defensive resources. Existing super-heavy artillery, including the various 420mm siege howitzers, achieved maximum ranges of approximately 15 kilometers. What German planners envisioned was a weapon capable of striking Paris from positions far enough behind the front lines to be invulnerable to French counter-battery fire, that could maintain a sustained bombardment over weeks or months, and that would achieve strategic psychological effect rather than tactical military objectives. The specification required an unprecedented range, which meant unprecedented muzzle velocity, which meant unprecedented chamber pressure and barrel stress. Conventional artillery design principles suggested the weapon was impossible. Development began in 1916 under the direction of the Crépy armaments firm. The lead designers, whose names remain partially classified in German military archives, approached the problem by abandoning conventional design constraints entirely. Standard artillery achieved range through an optimal balance between projectile weight, propellant charge, and barrel length. Increasing the range required increasing one or more of these factors, but each increase had physical limits. Heavier projectiles required stronger barrels. Larger propellant charges generated pressures that exceeded steel's structural capacity. Longer barrels became impossible to transport or traverse. The Crépy solution was to accept these limitations and design around them. The Paris gun would be transported in sections, assembled on site, mounted on a fixed rail platform that eliminated traverse requirements, and fired at chamber pressures that would destroy the barrel after minimal use. The barrel would be considered expendable and replaced as needed. The final weapon used a 210mm naval rifle barrel from obsolete warship main batteries, bored out and relined to 238mm diameter at the breech, tapering to 210mm at the muzzle. Total barrel length was 34 meters, making it the longest artillery barrel ever constructed for field use. The barrel was supported by an external cage of steel hoops and cables to prevent catastrophic failure under firing stress. The breech mechanism was a massive sliding block capable of sealing against chamber pressures approaching 5,000 atmospheres. The entire assembly was mounted on a specially constructed rail platform with hydraulic elevation mechanisms allowing adjustment from approximately 45 to 55 degrees. The total weight of the complete weapon system exceeded 750 metric tons. Transportation required multiple railway flat cars. The assembly on site took approximately 3 weeks with specialized cranes and engineering units. The projectile was a streamlined steel shell weighing approximately 106 kilograms, containing 7 kilograms of high explosive. This was an extraordinarily small payload ratio, less than 7% of total projectile weight, but the shell's design prioritized aerodynamic efficiency and structural strength over explosive content. The propellant charge used approximately 200 kilograms of specially formulated powder, producing a muzzle velocity of approximately 1,640 meters per second. This was nearly 5 times the speed of sound and exceeded the muzzle velocity of almost any other artillery piece ever built. The shell reached a maximum altitude of approximately 40 kilometers during its parabolic trajectory, entering the stratosphere where air density was less than 1% of sea level. Flight time from firing to impact was approximately 3 minutes. The extreme velocity and altitude meant minimal air resistance for most of the trajectory, allowing ranges impossible with conventional artillery arcs. Operational deployment began in March 1918. 3 weapons were constructed, designated as batteries, and positioned in the forest of Coucy-le-Château, approximately 120 kilometers northwest of Paris. The emplacements were camouflaged and protected by anti-aircraft batteries and fighter patrols. Firing began on March 23, 1918 at 0716 hours. The first shell impacted in the Quai de la Seine near the Pont de Crémy. French authorities initially attributed the explosion to a bombing raid, but no aircraft were detected. Additional shells fell throughout the day at intervals determined by barrel cooling requirements and loading procedures. Each gun could fire approximately 1 round every 20 minutes, with longer pauses required after every 10 to 15 rounds for barrel inspection and potential replacement. The bombardment continued intermittently until August 1918, by which time German forces were retreating and the gun positions were under threat of capture. The strategic impact was entirely psychological. The total explosive tonnage delivered to Paris over 5 months was less than a single heavy bomber raid would deliver in World War II. Casualties totaled approximately 250 killed and 620 wounded. Physical damage was minimal and random, as accuracy at 120 kilometers was measured in hundreds of meters. The terror derived from the bombardment's inexplicability. Shells arrived without warning at unpredictable intervals from an unidentified source. French counter-battery efforts were useless because the guns were far beyond the range of French artillery. Air raids against the suspected gun positions achieved nothing because the emplacements were too well camouflaged and dispersed. The population of Paris had no defense except to endure. Some reports suggest civilian morale declined measurably during the bombardment, though quantifying such effects is difficult. French industrial production did not decrease. Military operations were unaffected. The bombardment achieved propaganda value but no measurable strategic objective. Comparison with other long-range artillery of the period reveals the Paris gun's extreme specialization. The German 420mm howitzers firing at high angles could reach 15 kilometers with 900 kilogram shells. The French 370mm railway guns achieved approximately 40 kilometers of range with 500 kilogram shells. The British 14-inch railway guns reached similar ranges with similar projectiles. All of these weapons were designed for counter-battery fire or siege operations against fortifications. The Paris gun was designed exclusively for terror bombardment of civilian areas at ranges that made military targeting impossible. No other nation attempted comparable weapons during World War I. The concept itself was considered by most military theorists to be strategically wasteful, expending enormous resources for minimal tactical return. The limitations were substantial and inherent to the design. Barrel wear was catastrophic. Each shot eroded the rifling measurably. After approximately 65 rounds, accuracy degraded to the point where targeting specific areas of Paris became impossible. After 80 to 90 rounds, the barrel was unsafe to fire and required replacement. Barrel replacement required disassembling significant portions of the weapon, transporting the old barrel away and the new barrel to the site, and reassembling everything. This process took approximately 2 weeks per barrel. 3 guns firing continuously would have required new barrels every month, faster than manufacturing could supply them. In practice, the guns fired intermittently, partially to manage barrel wear and partially because sustained fire would have required propellant and projectile production beyond available capacity. The projectiles themselves were expensive and time-consuming to manufacture, as each required precision machining to survive the launch forces. Accuracy was another fundamental limitation. At 120 kilometers, small variations in propellant charge, projectile weight, barrel wear, wind conditions, or atmospheric density produced dispersion measured in hundreds of meters. The guns could target Paris as a city, but could not target specific buildings or districts reliably. This made the weapon useless for military objectives requiring precision. The extreme range also meant flight time sufficient for sophisticated sound ranging and flash spotting techniques to locate the gun positions. French artillery observers eventually identified the approximate location of the batteries, but lacked weapons capable of reaching them. Had the war continued, American long-range artillery, then being developed, might have been able to engage the positions, forcing relocation and further complicating an already difficult logistics situation. The 3 Paris guns fired approximately 367 shells at Paris and the surrounding areas between March and August 1918. They killed approximately 250 people and wounded approximately 620. They destroyed or damaged perhaps 100 buildings. They consumed resources equivalent to manufacturing and deploying dozens of conventional artillery batteries that might have provided tactical support on the battlefield. Whether this represented sound strategic calculation or wasteful propaganda gesture remains debated among military historians. What is not debatable is the engineering achievement. Creating a weapon that could fire projectiles 120 kilometers required solving problems in metallurgy, propellant chemistry, projectile design, and ballistic calculation that exceeded any previous artillery development. The gun worked, despite skepticism from both German and Allied experts who considered the specifications impossible. After the war ended, advancing Allied forces found the gun positions abandoned and partially destroyed. German forces had dismantled the weapons and removed critical components to prevent capture and analysis. No complete Paris gun survived. Fragments and documentation were recovered, allowing post-war reconstruction of the weapon's specifications and operating principles. These reconstructions confirmed that the gun's performance had been accurately reported and that its maximum range exceeded 130 kilometers in testing, even greater than the distance to Paris. The Krupp engineers who designed the weapons scattered after the war. Most declined to discuss their work publicly. The technical documentation was partially destroyed or classified by various governments. Modern attempts to fully reconstruct the Paris gun's design rely on fragmentary evidence and engineering analysis of what remains. The woman in the Place de la République, who survived the first day's bombardment, never learned what weapon had fired the shells that killed her neighbors. The German government never publicly acknowledged the Paris gun during the war, maintaining ambiguity about whether the bombardment came from aircraft, artillery, or some unknown terror weapon. French civilians could not defend against a threat they could not identify or understand. The shells continued falling at irregular intervals for 5 months, each explosion a reminder that distance provided no safety and that weapons could reach them from beyond the horizon. The terror was mechanical, mathematical, and entirely deliberate.